So I love that we like kind of went through kind of like the sacrifices and discipline that you have to do in order to achieve a certain body composition. So you see we I guess it's a human thing. We like to make things like easy and we like to cheat and we want to get things, fast and the least resistance. So you see everyone that's going bananas over this Ozempic drug and
Mhm.
whatever all the other things are. And then recently they're now saying they want to give it to kids. So got it approved at high dose for 12 and up. And I was like, I had to look this stuff up today because it was so alarming. But childhood obesity is up to almost 20%, which is about 15 million kids. The crazy part is of that 20%, 12.7 are 2 to 5 years old, which
Jeez.
breaks my heart because I have a 3.5-year-old and I don't think he could eat enough food to get even chubby. Like this kid is just always running and jumping and playing and he eats and he's like a regular healthy body mass for his age. So when you see that, and you're like, how can 2 to 5 year olds be obese at that level? And then instead of looking at all of the reasons that that kid is obese, and we're not just saying just like chubby, like clinically obese, we're saying let's just give them this drug. And to me, I think that's crazy because you're not correcting the bad behaviors or the bad environment that's leading to that. Because I think, to my understanding, obesity, it's not really genetic. Like it's a really small percentage of people that is a real contributing factor. And I don't know if that's correct or incorrect.
There are some genetically inherited traits for sure, and especially from a satiety brain chemistry aspect, I do think the epigenetics of like your parents, their habits can actually, like for example, if the mother is has exceptionally bad eating habits and she's morbidly obese, it's more likely that the child will also inherit that, which can make it a taller, I don't know, task for them to overcome, especially when they don't have the guidance from their parents to actually teach them how to fix things because obviously they didn't, do it themselves. So, however, that's not to say that people couldn't, fix their stuff. I don't know anyone really like there are people who exist obviously who have dramatic, hormone deficiencies and whatnot who will never be able to get in shape unless they correct that via medical interventions. But
Hmm.
that's, the severe minority, of course. The majority of people who have good eating habits can and exercise activity, blah blah blah, can definitely maintain good, good shape without having to go on a appetite crushing drug for sure. So I think a lot of people, the first step is to just stop buying the stuff that is pushing them over. Like I guess to the most granular level, people just need to figure out how to track first of all, which is hard to tell a child, of course, because if they have a parent who is not in the know of how to get in shape and they let their child eat, to excess of highly palatable, processed foods and whatnot, then you can see how they end up in this position, especially with the more increasingly sedentary lifestyles, even in children, I imagine now too, with, the video games and the social media, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, it's tough because it's like some of these kids, if you don't correct the underlying issue, they will not get in shape. But it's like, how do you impart that knowledge at scale when you have parents who don't know it themselves and clearly aren't adopting it and bring it into their own lives? So I sort of get where in certain scenarios it could make sense, but I also, definitely would be concerned about the consequences of some child being reliant on a drug to maintain their appetite with unforeseen consequences for, the future. Cause we also don't know what's going to happen 20 years from now from a kid who's been on semaglutide for this entire time. Who knows what's going to happen? Like there are, certain side effects that go not really spoken about prominently. So yeah, like I think a lot of people at the end of the day, you could definitely correct things if you were to fix the underlying issue. It's just a matter of how do you do that at scale? It's just difficult.
Yeah, the doctor in the article was saying that it's a lifelong medication, and the moment that you stop taking it, the weight comes back on, and then the side effects that I've heard about are loss in like 30% in like in lean muscle mass and bone density. So if you're giving it to a kid pre-puberty, so 12 is usually pre-puberty for most kids, and you're talking about something that affects bone health, that seems detrimental or possibly detrimental.
A lot of people conflate the appetite suppressing properties with it literally does this, which it's an indirect consequence. So by inhibiting your appetite, you are eating less. And by extension of that, you will lose weight and could be bone mass if you're severely depriving yourself of nutrition while you're in your growing years, especially. For individuals to say, oh, you'll gain it all back. Like basically what would happen is your body would then return to the environment that previously you were incapable of achieving, the body composition that was good because your habits were not, you know, representative of a healthy eating pattern. So it's not necessarily that taking the drug out makes you fat. It's more that now you don't have the appetite suppressing qualities of it. And now your appetite's back to baseline and you have not changed the type of foods that you're eating. So now you are eating higher quantities of them again. And that restores your weight back in, relatively short order because you didn't correct the underlying problem. So yeah, like ultimately at the end of the day, it is sort of like a band-aid for like a really bad bleeding cut or something. Like you are
Mhm.
trying to just like cover up the issue by lowering your food intake of what are otherwise not good quality foods typically. And that's where you get the, lean body mass losses or bone loss in some cases. Individuals who are already eating a diet that is disproportionately low in protein. And now, if my appetite's even lower and I already kind of prefer highly palatable foods that are not necessarily nutrient dense, what am I probably going to be reaching for to hit my lower calorie amounts? It's going to be the highly palatable foods and proportionally lesser so, the healthy ones. So it could kind of exacerbate unhealthy eating patterns and you could lose weight, but you are still like eating the same bad choices. It's just like to a
Right.
lesser amount, or without the drug, you eat a higher amount of the bad food. So and that's not always the case, though. Like, it definitely helps a lot of people, but I would be very hesitant to give it to a child
I was
for
gonna say,
sure.
yeah, because if you're giving it to a 12-year-old who's primarily eating, like, butter noodles and toast, and then all of
Yeah,
a sudden they're eating, almost the same as if they had stomach surgery, so they're still
yeah.
eating that shitty food, and now they're getting even less of the minimal nutrients that are in that. It just seems like there's gonna be a consequence when it goes to, like, those really big growth spurts that they're about to
Oh,
hit.
yeah, like inhibited height outcomes,
Right.
inhibited muscle and bone growth. Yeah, I would be very concerned about that.